and I made him watch. So this was probably one of my favorite movies to research.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun because this movie means a lot to a lot of people, and now it means a good bit to me now that I've looked into it and done some research in the background and stuff. It's pretty good. I'm really excited to get into this one.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was definitely a good slasher, and it really reminds me of a lot of things that we've seen, at least within the last 20, 30 years. So
And there's a reason for that.
yeah. So
Hello and welcome back to And I Made Him Watch, the podcast where I make my husband watch weird and strange movies. I'm your host, Dani Page, and here with me forever and always, the man who would swap my eggnog for arsenic if he thought he'd get out of this. My husband and filmmaker, Troy Allen. You ready to ruin the holidays, or is that just me? You ready to just ruin Christmas?
Of course, yes. Christmas is by far not my favorite holiday, but I love it.
You do?
To an extent.
You looked confused when you said I loved.
I don't know. I'm confused. Anyways, yeah, this movie was definitely up there.
Oh yeah, it's a good one. It's a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So continuing our holiday horror theme for this month, I made you watch Black Christmas from 1974. I've seen this one a handful of times. It has a very infamous scene that still gets me every time I watch this movie. This movie means a lot to people because of its timing, how it pushed the B-horror genre and slasher genre forward and made room for others to follow. Black Christmas walks so Halloween could run, type of shit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
This movie is probably one of the most important and influential movies we've watched so far. Just some trigger warnings before we get started. There is talk of assault, verbal assault, abortion, and rape in this movie.
Yeah. Definitely some sensitive subjects in today's society.
Yes, definitely. So you ready to just get started? Ready to get into it?
If you are.
Okay.
I'm dying to do this.
Are you really?
Yes.
Did you get some good notes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm excited. So the movie starts out the gate with a title card and with some eerie chorus singing Silent Night. We see a house in the dark of night dressed in Christmas lights, and the intro credits continue. This is a sorority house. It's Kappa Pi or Kappa or Ki Kappa something. They only say it once in the film, I think.
Yeah, it's an assortment of Greek letters.
Yes, it is. The sorority house is buzzing with a holiday excitement as someone stalks outside with a breathing problem. They need an inhaler. The stalker lingers outside listening to the party. This is one of those movies where we get a lot of POV from the killer, which I enjoy.
Yeah. The opening shot was definitely showcasing the power of lighting, because you have this otherwise decorative festive scene of this house and the Christmas lights and stuff, but with the way that the lighting was very dramatic and stuff, really gave you that creepy vibe.
Oh yeah. How it's shot, it's completely dark. It is dark, and the only thing you really can make out is what the holiday lights are actually showing you.
Yeah.
And then you have this very dark figure coming in and cutting through that light to create more darkness, and it's just it's beautiful. It's wonderful. Inside, one of the girls closes the front door that had been left open. That was Barb. We get another POV as a stalker climbs up the lattice on side of the house. Inside, Barb and one of the housemates are talking about preparing for some Santa stuff when Barb gets a long-distance call, which she takes in another room. Meanwhile, the stalker is opening a window to the house upstairs and climbs into the attic.
So these POV shots that we're seeing, I'm a huge fan of Halloween, the Halloween franchise, Michael Myers and stuff. And if you've ever seen the first 1978 movie, like you said earlier, like Black Christmas walked so Halloween could run.
Yep.
And those shots are like almost, I'm not going to say like, exactly, but they're almost copy and paste.
A little bit, yeah.
So I was really taken aback by these shots for sure.
Barb is having some trouble with the phone as one of the other housemates tells everyone that the party is over and the men have to leave. Claire says goodnight to her boyfriend and mentions for him to call before he comes over next time to kind of like prepare her parents. The stalker begins to explore their house as he listens to Barb on the phone and the guys leave. Barb's mom is pretty much uninvited Barb to Christmas, which is horrible and explains so much about Barb's character. She and a few of the others decide that they'll just go skiing, like on a skiing trip anyway. Mm-hmm. Barb's a bitch, but her hair is so fucking cute. Barb is adorable. Her little like bangs and the updo, beautiful.
Yeah. She definitely has a very striking appearance. Like not a bad look, just very, I don't know, like appealing to the eye.
Oh yeah.
Also, this house, badass.
The house is gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a little bit more about the house later.
Okay.
The phone rings and is answered by Jess. Turns out on the other end is who the girls are calling the moaner. These calls seem to have been happening quite often. The girls gather around and listen in on the call. The caller makes some very strange sounds, what starts to sound gaspy little moans and very obscure cackling, along with saying that he wants to lick it and some other things that it's so fucking creepy. Barb doesn't seem too bothered by it, and she grabs the phone and they banter. She banters with the guy until he says, "I'm going to kill you," and hangs up. Like, we get all this giggling and high-pitched moaning and stuff, and then it kind of like pauses, and the killer says straight, "I'm going to kill you."
Yeah.
And just ends it, and it's...
Yeah, it was pretty fucked up as far as like prank calls go. If you ask me, I honestly like I could see it not even being scripted. It was just like Ted Bundy found the phone number or something like that. I mean, this was the 70s, so
yeah,
you never know. But I could just imagine fucking, who is this? Ted. My name's Ted. Sorry, this is the wrong number. Sorry.
The girls are like, "Barb, you need to chill." And she just brushes it off. Even one of the other girls mentioning, I think Jess mentioned it, that a rape happened a few weeks ago. And Barb is like, "You can't rape a townie." Charming.
Yeah, very charming.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. Jess and Barb fuss at each other for how Barb acts and treats Claire, who Barb calls a professional virgin. Mrs. Mack, the house mother, shows up with some gifts. Upstairs, Claire begins to pack for the holidays. As she's taking clothes out of her closet, we can see a figure standing in the back of her closet. It's very obscured by these like hangers that are got the protective plastic over them. Claire hears Mrs. Mack's cat, Claude, meowing from the closet, and she approaches. The intruder then grabs Claire, wrapping her face in the plastic protective cover. Downstairs, the girls are giving Miss Mack her gifts, drowning out the sounds of Claire's struggles. We then see a shadow figure carrying the body up into the attic. Were you like ready for that, or were you caught off guard completely?
I was caught off guard by the figure in the closet, but like, well, it's like if you've ever picked up like clothing from the dry cleaners or something like that, and it comes in these big bags. Yeah. So there's like, 2 or 3 of these clear bags in the closet, and you can barely make out this like figure standing behind them and stuff. And there's a couple of like POV shots from the figure looking through the plastic and stuff. And then the whole like cat meowing at it and stuff. And you can clearly see Claire's like her instincts. Like she realizes that she's, in danger, like she's being watched or something like that. So It was pretty fucked up though.
I think by today's standards of this type of scenario, we are so used of it not being the killer at first, and so used to like finding that animal or that person or something, just playing a prank, or the animal like running out or jumping on the person, that I knew this was going to happen. I've seen this movie at least 2 times before I watched it for the podcast, and I still knew what was going to happen, but it still got me. Mm-hmm. It still caught me off guard because it is so quickly the first murder in this movie. I think it was like maybe 10 minutes, maybe like 10 to 15 minutes into the movie, and we already have someone being attacked and killed by our, monster person, our big bad guy.
Yeah.
Mrs. Mack gets the girls to go to bed, and she sneaks a sip of booze. Miss Mac may have a bit of a problem. The phone rings again, and the girls are cautious about answering, but when they do, it's just Peter, Jess's boyfriend. Jess is a bit frustrated and wants to talk to Peter about something serious and makes plans to meet tomorrow. Miss Mac begins to get ready for bed, and as she's brushing her teeth, she starts looking for booze again, and she finds some in the tank of the toilet and rinses her mouth out with it. Again, Miss Mac may have a problem. Maybe just a tiny little drinking problem.
Yeah, for Miss Mac to be the house mother, like, she is the wildest of them all.
She's a little wild.
When we see her take that first sip of booze, she's got this fucking hollowed out book in the bookcase.
Yep.
So she pulls out this fucking bottle of straight sherry, and then the bottle in the toilet tank later. Like, I was like, bro, she got problems.
Yeah, B for booze.
Yeah.
Jess goes to Claire's room and knocks, but there's no answer, obviously. Cut to Claire, who has been staged in a rocking chair in the attic with her face struck in a scream with the plastic wrapped around it. Gets me every time. That's the scene that gets me. The first time we see Claire's like forever frozen scream wrapped in that plastic, it is terrifying, but yet it is so well done. It's almost artistic.
Yeah.
It's got a very like eerie beauty to it with the lighting and everything. Mm-hmm. A creepy version of a man singing a high-pitched voice. It's Daddy's Gone a Hunting, like the nursery rhyme, plays as the chair starts to rock and then stop.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say about that. Like, it was just so fucked up, and how she's staged in this rocking chair and in the window. But yeah, when she's staged in the window and you can clearly see her from the street, but yeah, her face being stuck in that, like,
in the lighting.
Yeah, that perpetual scream.
That very white and blue cold light is just
like, she's clearly dead. So sad.
The next morning, we see a man, Mr. Harrison, is standing outside of the university waiting for something when he's hit in the head with a snowball by some kids. Turns out this is Claire's dad, and he's been waiting for her. A frat bro then gives him directions to the sorority house. Back at the house, Barb and one of the other girls' boyfriends are entertaining some local kids. And they're bickering about the ski trip because his girl was supposed to be going away with him, and now it's the ski trip with Barb, and first world problems. Am I right?
Right. And he gets fucking pegged with that snowball, dude. Like, it knocks his fucking glasses off and stuff.
We're going back to Mr. Harrison. Okay.
Dude.
How you said he gets pegged? I'm like, what part of the movie? Did I miss a part of the movie?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. He looks like he may take it, I don't know. But well, that was Mr. Harrison. He got pegged with the snowball.
Yeah.
By the kids.
I thought you were talking about Phil's boyfriend.
Oh, I mean, him too. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. We listen and we don't judge.
So Mr. Harrison shows up at the house, at the sorority house, and Miss Mac tells Claire's father that she may be working with the underprivileged children. And he isn't impressed by the house or the decor that is in Claire's room. Because you have to remember, this is like the early 70s, so there's lots of like art with nudity. At one point, Mrs. Mac like covers a bit of a poster that has someone's butt. But he sees it anyway. So Mrs. Mack offers to show him the way to the fraternity that she's mentioned and asks for a ride. He agrees, and Mrs. Mack complains to her reflection and sneaks more booze. And she hears her cat meowing again. She hears Claude and starts to search for him and dumping her purse on accident as she continues to call out for her cat. She calls the cat a prick as Mr. Harrison comes up the stairs face to face with him. And you know he smells that booze on her breath.
Yeah.
He has to smell that booze.
Like, Mr. Harrison is he's such a like a douchebag.
He is. Kinda. He kind of, you don't expect him to have as much as an influence in the story as little as we see him. Right. But he turns out to be a little bit of an important piece of the puzzle.
Right. But so during this, we also get a scene, a shot of the exterior of the house during the daytime. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it really reminded me of like where they shot Alice, Sweet Alice. You know, it kind of looked like that a little bit. Like the churchy kind of feel.
Oh, I mean, it's not like a converted church or anything. Yeah. But I mean, it's similar time period, mm-hmm. I do believe. So I get that. Yeah. Over at the music hall, Jess tells Peter that she's pregnant. And Peter is actually excited to hear that, but Jess is like, doesn't want it. And she tells him that she wants an abortion. They get into it a little, and Peter pressures her. Did I say it right?
I think you said it right.
Okay, it sounds weird. Pressures her to have the baby. He calls her selfish and then turns around and says, "Don't you know how important this afternoon is to me?" Like, bro, you're going to call her selfish and now you're worried about what's going on in your personal little bubble? Mm-hmm. How we'll get into that later too. He then tells her to leave but wants to talk to her more later that night. Jess seems like she's made up her mind though. Like she's like, I got a future and it does not involve having a child right now. Yeah. And I got to look out for myself. Which that's completely fine. Yeah. That is completely valid, fine. Yeah. Yeah, it's very valid.
And obviously we're going to see more context into mm-hmm. that a little later, but
back at the house, Mr. Harrison is on the phone with his wife and all the kids are making a lot of noise. Barb is getting hammered and just little sorority things, Also, Barb is feeding this one kid whatever she's drinking. Great role model.
Yeah, genius.
Great role model.
I also, like, at this point, I didn't realize that Claire was in the attic. I didn't realize that the killer had carried her up there. I thought she was still in her room. Oh. And I was like, why hasn't anybody checked in her fucking room?
Oh, no. Yet? Yeah, she's up in the attic.
Yeah. 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 But it's almost like no one knows they have an attic.
Well, there's no reason to go up there, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah. Until, later. Yeah. The phone rings. Jess answers, but no one says anything. But then a shrill voice says, "Billy!" And Jess is like, "Wrong number." And the voice starts to ask where she put the baby and where did you put Agnes, Billy? It's super fucking creeper. Super fucking creepy. She hangs up the phone. Yeah. Like, I don't understand why they let it go on for how long it was going. As soon as I heard anything creepy, I'm like, nah, I'm good. Bye. I'm not going to give you that attention that you're seeking. I'm going to hang up the phone now. But anyway, the girls finally go to the police station with Mr. Harrison. The police don't seem to really care about what's happening throughout the whole movie. It's Officer Nash that is just like, this doesn't seem important, whatever. So they tell Officer Nash, or Officer Nash tells the girls that she's probably in a cabin with her boyfriend. And Mr. Harrison is not comforted by that at all. Back at the house, Mrs. Mack fills in Jess that Claire didn't meet her father, and then she starts looking for booze again.
I mean, can you blame her, though? I mean, if I were there, yeah, I'd probably stay fucked up, too.
I don't know if I would need to constantly be searching out booze. like Mrs. Mac does. Like, this seems like every hour on the hour, she's like looking for a stash.
I just don't understand why she feels the need to hide it.
So the girls don't find it, or Barb doesn't find it, probably.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see Barb just fucking drinking all of it, dude.
Yeah. Barb's got a little bit of a issue as well.
Yeah.
Barb pulls, speaking of Barb, Barb pulls some shit at the police station. Big surprise. She gives the police officer a fake address, telling Officer Nash that the house number is Fellatio 08802 or something like that. For some fucking reason. Like, you have someone who was missing and you're still playing your fucking tricks.
Well, so I think that was the phone number that she gave him.
Felicia.
Yeah. Well, so back then, they didn't have phone numbers like we have phone numbers. Mm-hmm. They had like an exchange code and then like a 5-digit number. So
okay, well, it's a house number. I do think they said house number. Okay. So yeah,
but
yeah, it could either be or whatever. Well, no, because later on they're confused because Jess gives them the correct address, but Officer Nash and the police officers don't make a connection because Barb is giving them the wrong one. Mm-hmm. So, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Jess starts to look for Claire and goes to ask Chris, Claire's boyfriend, and is filled on what's going on and that Claire's missing. Mm-hmm. Peter struggles at his piano thingy, his recital, and not sure what he's on. But yeah, that was painful to watch him play that piano because it's a jumble. I don't know if he was trying to do some experimental thing or trying to impress these guys, but they were not.
Yeah, that's not exactly what I would call like avant-garde. It was, I'm having a seizure, please help me.
Yeah, it was just a jumble of out of key, mismatched type of thing with the piano. I don't know what he was going for.
Yeah, like imagine Beethoven, but he's having a stroke. But he's also not Beethoven. He's pretending to be Beethoven.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. At the police station, a mother is worried about her missing daughters, and yet again, the police are like, nah, not a big deal. Whatever. Then Chris storms in upset over the lack of seriousness taken with Claire's missing. He finally gets to talk to the Lieutenant Ken, because there's some sort of like local connection between the two. Mm-hmm. Back at the house, Miss Mac tries to feed Mr. Harrison, who seems lost on what to do now with his missing daughter. Barb, a drunk Barb, who has been casually drinking all day, then teaches him about the turtles that screw for 3 days straight. Again, she's drunk. Also, the turtles she's talking about are sea turtles who do that. I looked it up. She then sobers up and says they think it's her fault that Claire is missing. And she just has a little bit of a rant. And Phil, one of the other sorority girls, then tells Barb that she's drunk and she needs to go to bed. And Barb's like, fine, whatever. And she goes up to her room.
Yeah, she was fucked up. She was pretty wasted.
So Peter's recital, like I said, didn't go as well as he planned, and we get this scene of him destroying his piano with a mic stand.
Pretty wild.
It probably wasn't even his piano. It was probably the school's piano, and he just took the base of a mic stand and just started thrashing it.
It was like watching like Kurt Cobain destroy his guitar after a set, except it was a piano.
Yeah, and Kurt Cobain probably did pretty well at that set.
Yeah.
Peter did not. No. Peter kind of fucking sucks.
He does suck.
Yeah. Jess and Chris show back up the sorority house with some news. As they leave, Miss Mac tells them she may not be there when they return. Also, the news was just about the search party, and I think the little girl. There's no audio for this scene because they're watching from the window,
right.
So we don't know exactly what's said, but they leave nonetheless. The police have gotten a search party together to look for the missing girls, including the missing little girl Janice, I think her name was, and then also Claire. Mr. Harrison, Jess, Phil, and Chris are among the search party. Mm-hmm. Back at the house, a dark figure sits outside. Inside, Mrs. Mack is packing to leave, and as the taxi honks for Miss Mack, she hears Claude again and starts to search for him. She follows the sounds of his meowing to the attic and climbs up the ladder. As she pokes her head into the attic, we see a pair of hands holding this massive hook. And as Miss Mack looks around again, she finally sees Claire's body in the rocking chair. She then turns her head to see the hook. The hook is released and nails her in the head and drags her up into the attic.
That shot was pretty cool. It was pretty badass.
Yeah.
Seeing the hands holding the hook and stuff. What I wasn't a fan of though is when Mrs. Mack was dragged up into the attic, I was expecting to see some sort of blood like coming from the attic, if you got hit in the head, and she wasn't just hit, but she was hooked.
Yeah, like it came through her jaw and up.
Yeah, so I was expecting to see some more blood.
Well, instead of blood, we get these like gasping, rattly breath types of sounds. So that was pretty creepy.
It was, yeah.
And for a slasher, we don't really get a ton of blood until later on, which still wasn't very gory.
Right.
But we'll also there's a reason we'll get into that too. The taxi driver comes to the door to see if anyone is home and then drives off when no one answers the door. In the attic, the killer watches the taxi drive off and begins to throw a fit, like screaming and yelling, rocking Claire in the chair violently and screaming at Mrs. Mack's body hanging from the hook.
I think in this scene, the reason he's throwing this tantrum is because he wants to be caught. Mm-hmm. Even, through these phone calls and stuff, like he just wants to be caught. And when the taxi driver leaves, he's still out there, he's not been caught.
Mm-hmm. Some serial killers are like that. Some serial killers, I'm not sure if it's they want to be caught. It's more like they want the recognition of what they're doing. And also they want witnesses of what they've done and what they've created. Mm-hmm. Well, serial killers are weird. They're so strange. They're fascinating and scary as fuck, but yeah. The search party finds the missing girl's body in the park. At the house, Jess answered the phone to hear the moaner crying and asking for help, and then some very just strange things, and mentions the name Billy again. Jess hangs up the phone and starts to look for Miss Mack, but she doesn't get any answers, obviously. Jess makes a call about the obscure phone calls and is surprised by Peter coming down from upstairs. Sorry. Turns out he came inside to warm up after waiting outside for her because Jess was with the search party. She then explains that, there's a little girl missing and stuff, and Peter just really doesn't seem to give a fuck.
Right. I mean, it was at this point where I was like, I think Peter's the killer.
Mm-hmm.
But, evidence was circumstantial at best.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. At the police station, Mr. Harrison overhears another report of a strange phone call. It turns out it's Jess on the other line, and Officer Nash is taking the call again. The officer takes down the address and just tells him it's probably their boyfriend playing a joke. Dude, you fucking suck at your job. Officer Nash makes me so angry. He makes me so angry.
He kind of reminds me of, I don't remember his fucking name, the one cop from Killer Clowns that we hated.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember his fucking name, but he's like, just a shitty
Mooney?
cop. Was it Mooney? Maybe.
It could have been Mooney.
But yeah, I was really kind of hoping hopefully Nash gets it.
Yeah, we're not so lucky. So Mr. Harrison overhears this phone call because he recognizes the address of the sorority house. Back at the house, Jess tells Peter about the murdered little girl and Claire is still missing, and Peter claims that Claire's probably fine. He then tells her he's leaving the conservatory and he's going to marry her. Boy. So apparently, Peter has been at this conservatory at this college for 8 years. And his college career is not going anywhere. Imagine going to college for 8 years straight and like not getting anywhere at all.
I couldn't do 3. I was just like, fuck this.
Jess doesn't love the idea, and she reminds him of when they first met. And she's got a plan and wants to live out her dreams and not start a family. She flat out tells him she does not want to marry him.
I mean, I feel like she could have let him down a little easier. Like,
I don't know if she could, because it's almost like Peter doesn't understand the words that Jess is saying. Like, he just hears wah 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 wah.
I mean, you don't just tell someone like, I'm going to marry you.
No.
You know, like it's some sort of matter of fact type thing.
It's like, maybe this will solve your problem and you want to keep, the baby. Right. That's not the point of he misses the point completely. Like, Jess is her own person and she had her own dreams. She's going to school. Like, she has plans, and having a baby at that moment was not part of her plans.
Right, because she tells him, like, just because your plans have changed doesn't mean I want to give up on my dreams.
Exactly. Ugh. Ooh.
Bucky.
Back at the police station, a few of the clues are coming together, and Mr. Harrison has given the Lieutenant Ken the report about the phone calls because the officer Nash, who had taken them, didn't want to bother the lieutenant with them. Like, he didn't see the importance of them. Yep, great fucking job, dude. Great job.
That's why you're at the desk, bro.
Mm-hmm. Actually, yeah. Right as he's about to call the house, one of the other officers starts to laugh, and Lieutenant Ken then confronts the Officer Nash about the fellatio joke because Barb had given him the incorrect information.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why we have a miscommunication with the events of what's actually going on at the sorority house, and then also what Barb told them.
Right.
Because she's a fucking bitch.
True. I
mean, drunk.
Yeah, I think her being drunk all the time makes her find shit funny that's not funny.
She literally opened a beer at the police station when she was giving them this information.
Yeah. Yeah. But Nash is like, he's like this movie's version of Farva.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just fucking stupid. Like, Car Ramrod. Come in, Car Ramrod.
Back at the sorority house, Peter and Jess are still fighting about the pregnancy. Jess kicks him out and tells her she'll be very sorry. Peter tells her she's going to be very sorry with her decision. Ugh. As Peter leaves, Lieutenant Ken and Phil show up. They want to tap the phone and take a look at Claire's room. Lieutenant Ken asks all the questions, and the girls fill him about all the information they can. They also have a police car watching the house outside.
Yeah, very detective-like.
Mm-hmm. Finally just getting things going
and
actually doing some serious work. Also, Peter is being a super freak and standing outside watching the house himself. Out in the snow. No, I don't think he left his coat. I think he's just in his, like, turtleneck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jess and Phil have a heart-to-heart, and Phil says she knows Claire is dead and that she can feel it. She then tells Jess that she's been taking pills for her cold, and they knock her out before excusing herself to her bed that night, leaving Jess all alone downstairs waiting by the phone. Mm-hmm. The police are doing their policing thing, setting up the phone and they keep mentioning that they have to have the line or the personal line for at least 10 minutes. Up in the attic, the killer rocks Claire in the rocking chair, a baby doll in her arms, as he sings Daddy's Gone Hunting Again.
Like, could you imagine getting a phone call like that and then being told, like, you have to keep them on the line for 10 minutes?
Honestly, I would probably just, like, not listen. Just, like, answer the phone, like, hey, and they start. I'm like, okay, I'm going to just set this down. Just going to set it down for a little while. You do your thing. I'm not going to disturb you.
Well, you got to make it seem like you're listening, you know? You got to
Really?
Yeah, you just got to keep like egging them on and stuff.
That's not what happened with Jess.
True, but this is a movie.
Yeah.
I'm talking real life.
I think as long as you didn't interrupt a serial killer, they would probably just keep talking to themselves.
True.
Honestly.
They could, yes.
Like they would probably feel like, oh, I'm getting away with this. Like I've disturbed them so much, I get to say whatever the fuck I want, and they're not gonna stop me.
Like, what's your favorite scary movie?
They could, but that's years from now. Claire waits by the phone alone. We get another POV of the killer leaving the attic and creeping downstairs into Barb's room. Hearing a gasping sound, Jess rushes to Barb, who is having an asthma attack. Barb says she had a nightmare about a stranger coming into her room. Barb gets back to sleep, and Jess leaves her to go see the carolers at the door.
That was no nightmare.
Nope, it wasn't. Upstairs, the killer is being creepy and wanders the house and then enters Barb's room again. He calls her Agnes before taking the glass unicorn and stabbing Barb in the chest. This is all being covered up by the sound of carolers outside that Jess is listening to. Outside, a woman rushes up to tell the kids to get into the car, and the carolers leave just as the phone rings. Jess rushes inside, and it's the moaner. This time, it sounds like a child screaming and crying. Even reciting a line that Peter told Jess earlier, just like having a wart removed. And the moaner hangs up the phone.
See, we keep being given these like little crumbs of like the killer may be Peter. Mm-hmm. And we have every reason to believe that it could be Peter. But I think that's also like what the killer wants us to think.
I don't know if it was the killer has that training of thought or like that thought process. I think he said the line to freak her out, not necessarily blame Peter. Especially if you're paying attention to the movie, right before Peter shows up, Jess is already on the phone with the moaner, and when you see Peter coming down the stairs.
Right.
And that was,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Ken calls to tell Jess that the call wasn't long enough and asks for more questions about the caller. He then gets distracted by one of his officers coming and bleeding. Apparently a farmer has shot the guy in the ass with some birdshot.
And all the other cops are just like, they're just laughing about it. Like, bro.
Dude's asshole's fucked up.
Yeah, dude.
Like
And I mean, you shot a cop, dude.
It's the 70s.
True.
It's the 70s.
It's the 70s.
Back at the house, Phil and Jess talk about the hunch that Peter may be making the calls. Phil checks to make sure the cop car is still there, and it is. The phone rings again, and it's Peter, and he is upset. He's like crying and saying, "Don't kill the baby," blah, 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 blah. The cops still trace the call as Peter cries and says they can't kill the baby. They go back and forth, and Jess is trying to get Peter to tell her where he is and to calm him down. They missed the trace again because it wasn't long enough. Lieutenant Ken calls again and gets into the personal lives of Jess and Peter. Ken thinks it might be Peter, but it can't be him because he was the one in the house when she received one of the calls, like we just talked about. The police have another search party, and a few of the guys show up at the sorority house looking for the killer, and the girls just send them off. The guys kind of were like trying to flirt with Phil and Jess, and Phil and just like, shoot.
I mean, one of them had a fucking shotgun in his hand, and they just opened the door.
Yep. Phil says she'd rather face the killer than the guys, and Jess mentions that the back door is the only one that has been locked the whole time, and that includes the front door and the windows. So the girls then begin to lock all the windows and doors in the house.
At this point, I was just like, you know what? Maybe this is good. Maybe maybe this is what you get for not locking your fucking doors.
It was the 70s, dude.
Still.
Which is, to me, honestly, that is crazy to think about, like, not having your door locked.
Yeah. It's like, bro, like, even back then, there was known cases of, like, home invasions.
Because people left their
And
shit
murders
unlocked.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And people were just like, oh, I guess that's just the cost of fucking living, I guess.
Well,
And
people
it's like,
were a lot more, like, trusting and stuff, you know? And then, yeah. Yeah. Phil goes into Barb's room to check on her, and the door is slammed behind her. Lieutenant Ken finds Peter's piano all trash, which kind of doesn't help Peter in that moment. Jess, after locking the front door, goes to look for Phil. The phone rings, and Jess answers it, and it's the moaner again. Jess says, stays on the line as she listens to the screaming and the sounds as the police try to trace the call once again. They are finally about to trace the call, and turns out the call is coming from 6 Belmont Street, from inside the house.
I'll be honest, it was intense.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Because you're watching this guy, the lineman guy, and I guess the way that they trace calls is he's got to run all over this fucking warehouse to see like where the call is actually coming from. And then finally he figures it out, and he calls the fucking lieutenant, and he's like, yeah, it's coming from 6 Belmont Street. And because Nash is the one that relays it, and he's like, no, that's where the call is going to.
Yeah.
And Nash is like, that's where it's coming from, and it's going to. And they're just like, oh no.
Well, it turns out, and it's mentioned later in the movie, that there are 2 lines in the house. There's the line for the sorority house, and there's a line for Miss Mac. And they didn't really look into the line that was in Miss Mac's room because her line hadn't been called. It only just been the sorority house.
Right. But I guess it just didn't dawn on them that it could have been coming from her line.
Realizing this, Lieutenant Ken calls the cops. The cops that's outside, stationed outside the house, and it turns out he's not there. He's not answering, and he's been killed. Ken then tells Officer Nash to call Jess, but not to let her know the calls are coming from inside the house. Nash calls Jess and tells her to put the phone on the hook and to leave the house. When she's like, yeah, okay, I'll just grab the other girls. And Nash then just spills the fucking beans and tells her that the calls are coming from inside the house. Jess then leaves the phone off the hook and moves to the door. She yells up to the other girls, thinking like Barb and Phil, but they don't answer. And Jess begins to freak the fuck out. Like, she is screaming for them just to please say something to answer her. And then I'm like, the whole time, I'm like, girl, get out of the house. Get out. But does she leave the house? No. She does not leave the house.
The whole like cat and mouse thing in the house was really well thought out, you know. And it really did remind me a lot of like Scream, where Ghostface is on the phone with Drew Barrymore's character, and he's like, what's your name? And she's like, why, you want to ask me out or something? And he's like, no, I just want to know who I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, bro. Dude.
The whole phone trope, it's from this movie.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that. Let's finish the movie. Does she leave the house? No. She grabs a fire poker from the fireplace and starts to venture upstairs. She goes into Barb's room and finds both Barb and Phil, bodies covered in blood, on the bed. This is probably the kill scene of Barb, and then this scene are probably just the bloodiest parts in the movie, and you still don't see a lot of the gore.
Yeah.
A voice calls out to Jess, calling her Agnes, and we see a wild brown eye peeking through the door crack at Jess. Jess pushes the door into the killer and rushes downstairs. She tries to open the door, but it's locked. Imagine that. And the killer grabs her by the hair and pulls her down onto the floor. Jess is able to rush to the basement and lock herself in. The killer thrashes at the door for a while before going completely silent and walking away. And Jess goes into the basement to check it out.
the shot of that eye looking through the door crack. Fuck you, bro.
Dude.
Like,
Such a good shot. Such a good shot.
I would have just like poked him in the eye. Just through the door crack. Like, I learned that from Captain Insano.
The police are on the way, by the way. The police are on the way. Jess hears a muffled voice from one of the windows and gets closer to get a better look. She watches as this silhouette of a man crouches down and tries to look into the frosted glass. We watch the silhouette move around the house and comes to the basement door outside. The man calls out to her and tries to peer inside through the iced window. Oh, look, it's Peter!
Hi, Peter.
Who then kicks in the glass of the door and climbs into the basement. Jess sinks into the shadows of the basement as Peter calls out to her and looks around the basement. Peter sees her and gets closer, telling her how worried he was.
I feel like anybody would be...
Yes.
Yes. Expected to think that Peter was the killer. Like...
Dude.
Obviously, all signs point to Peter.
Peter is such a misogynistic fucking asshole. To the point where he breaks down a window of the door and climbs through this broken window to get to the woman who has not responded to him, who hasn't said a fucking word to him. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, let me help you. I'm sorry. Did I scare you? No. What the fuck? You just broke a window to get to me, dude.
Well, I mean...
What the fuck?
He gets what he's getting, though.
The police finally arrive in time to hear Jess screaming. They knock down the door to the basement and find Peter dead and Jess unconscious.
She beat his ass to death with a fire poker.
Yes, she fucking did.
Like, Jess is a real one.
Dude, I don't, like, logically, yeah. Logically, yes. You know, like, the dude broke down a window and crawled into the basement to get to me. Yes, I'm gonna, nope.
Yeah, and she would be completely, excusable for that. I mean, I'd have done the same thing.
The police sit with a sedated Jess as they go over the details of the case. Lieutenant Ken says that he knew it was Peter all along, and also Mr. Harrison is also out of it, and the police then leave Jess alone as Ken talks to reporters and the other officers take Mr. Harrison to the hospital to treat him for shock. They turn the lights off in the room with Jess in it as they all leave. The camera is panned to Barb's room and we see a bloodstain on the bed. We pan further down the hall to see Phil's room empty. We then hear the giggles from a strange man's voice and the creaking from the attic. The voice begins to sing Daddy's Gone A-Hunting. We see Claire's plastic wrap face again as the camera zooms out, and we see the house, a single police officer outside as the phone begins to ring again.
Dun dun.
Who was phone?
Who was phone?
Who was phone?
I think the phone was the killer.
It was the phone the whole time.
It was the phone. Like, all signs point to phone. I mean, fuck, bro.
All right. The 1974 film Black Christmas is a seminal horror movie credited with helping to establish the modern slasher genre. Directed by Bob Clark, the movie blends suspense, horror, and psychological thriller elements with a chilling holiday setting. Clark adhered to a strict rule while developing the female characters. He avoided objectifying them or including any nude scenes. His goal was to portray the college women as authentic, multidimensional individuals rather than disposable horror tropes. So that's why no nudity in this one. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of gore. We don't see a lot of killing of the victims, really. It's usually just we see the action taking place and then we cut off screen and then we see what happened to them as a result.
Yeah.
It is considered one of the very first slasher films. After Psycho and Peeping Tom both were in 1960s. Peeping Tom is actually one of the very first POV killing movies. So there was a lot of influential
Well,
from that.
I guess we're gonna have to watch that one too.
Probably, yeah. This film is widely regarded as the first seasonal slasher in a horror history, setting the stage for holiday-themed movies. It follows the iconic entries. It's followed by iconic entries like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Prom Night, Mother's Day, Graduation Day, My Bloody Valentine, Silent Night, Deadly Night, which we watched last episode, and April Fool's Day, just to name a few.
If you have not listened to that episode, we highly recommend checking it out.
Of course.
But yeah, the slasher trope is definitely my favorite horror,
Trope?
Yeah.
Genre? Type?
Genre. Yeah, there we go. But I have a soft spot for like Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and all this stuff, and it's refreshing to kind of see where this all began.
Oh yeah.
So I loved it.
It's a very important movie. So our cast: Olivia Hussey?
Hussey.
Hussey? How would you say that? Olivia.
Don't church it up, man. No, I don't know. Olivia Hussey.
Yeah.
Sure.
Olivia Hussey as Jess. Margot Kidder as Bob. Andrea Martin as Phil. I don't know do you know who Andrea Martin is?
Mm-mm.
She's pretty famous nowadays. Like she's had some pretty interesting roles. John Saxon as Lieutenant Kim. Keir Duella as Peter, and then Mark Mancuso?
Oh, Nick Mancuso.
What did I say, Mark?
I think you said Mark. Yeah.
Nick Mancuso as the voice of Billy.
Mm.
So it had an approximate budget of $686,000 Canadian. This is a Canadian movie, by the way.
Oh.
The box office was 1.3 mil in Canada and then 4 million worldwide. Despite its modest budget, the film achieved impressive production values thanks to resourceful direction and dedicated cast and crew. It was filmed in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It was nominated at the Saturn Academy Awards of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Film for Best Horror Film in 1976. It won Best Sound Editing in Canadian Film Awards. Also won Best Performance by Lead Actress Margot Kidder. And then also nominated for Best Featured Film. It was nominated for Edgar Allan Poe Awards for Best Motion Pictures in 1976.
I mean, that's quite a bit of accolades, especially coming off of a $686,000 production budget. So,
principal photography took place in Toronto, with the sorority house being a key location. The wintry setting was enhanced by the authentic Canadian weather. The sorority house featured in the film was not a constructed set, but a real house rented for production. Certain scenes in the script were adjusted to fit the house's layout and structure. Today, the house remains standing as a private residence, but serves as a popular tourist attraction. When the house was first rented for the film production, it had been vacant and was in poor condition, featuring old wallpaper and chipped paint. As a result, the production team had to repaint the walls and replace the wallpaper to give the house a more polished look. The house was selected largely because of its imposing staircase, which director Bob Clark appreciated for the cinematic potential. He was particularly drawn to the idea of capturing just someone's feet at the top of the stairs without revealing the full body.
Oh.
That is planning. That is directing. That is amazing.
But unfortunately, we never saw that.
What do you mean?
In the movie.
Yeah, we see Peter coming down the stairs.
Oh, we do see Peter. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But
there's so many shots of that staircase.
There are a ton of shots of the staircase. There's one particular that I really like where Jess and Phil are talking, and in the background you can see the shadow moving around.
Mm-hmm. That's another point. Yep.
Yeah.
While Black Christmas was not an immediate box office smash, it gained a cult following over time and is now regarded as one of the most influential horror films of all time. Its innovative use of first-person perspective, ambitious storytelling, and final girl trope influenced later slasher films like Halloween. The obscure phone calls were largely improvised by Mancuso and others, adding to their disturbing nature. The audio of the deranged phone calls was added during post-production. During the filming, the actresses were actually reacting to unsettling dialogue delivered off-camera by director Bob Clark.
Nice. That's good thinking.
Writer Roy Moore reportedly drew inspiration for the story from a series of murders in Montreal, Quebec during the Christmas season, as well as the urban legend, The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs.
Ooh.
It was likely inspired by Canadian serial killer Wayne Bowden, who murdered 3 women in Montreal between October 1969 and January 1970. His fourth victim was killed in Calgary, Alberta in May 1971. Bowden infamously dubbed the vampire rapist because of his notorious crimes. Creepy. Very creepy. But that also kind of proves how life inspires art in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
A 1976 novelization of Black Christmas by Lee Hayes expands on the original story by following Roy Moore's initial script more closely. This includes additional character development, extended dialogue, and background for the Pi Kappa Sigma was the name of the cult. I wrote it down, actually. I wrote down the sorority. Pi Kappa Sigma sorority house, providing a richer context in the film's final cut. The film has inspired multiple remakes and fan sequels. A 2006 remake by Glenn Morgan explored Billy's backstory in more graphic detail, with Andrea Martin returning from the original cast. A second remake in 2019, directed by Sophia Tackle, offered a modern reinterpretation starring Imogen Poots. Additionally, a fan-made sequel, It's Me, Billy, debuted in 2021, continuing the story 50 years later. Its second chapter, released in 2024, featured a new cast addition, including Canadian actress Lisa Kovac, and commemorating the original film's 50th anniversary.
We'll have to check those out.
The film has been praised in numerous rankings, appearing in Bravo's The 100 Scariest Movie Moments at number 87. Do you remember was that the one we watched? That might have been the one we watched. IndieWire's The 100 Best Horror Movies of All Time at number 67, which highlighted the mysterious killer Billy in the film's bleak, foreboding ending. It has also been featured in ranking by Thrillist, Esquire, and Complex, and accolades such as the second best slasher film by Complex and Jess Bradford naming the top final girl by Pace. Critics have also noted the feminist undertones seen in Jesse's decision-making and the film's critique of casual misogyny, despite Clark's claim that political commentary was not his intent, even though he went out of his way to make sure the girls weren't objectified.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good feminist statement, honestly. Legend has it that Black Christmas was Elvis Presley's favorite horror film, and he reportedly watched it every Christmas. Rumor has it that his family continued the tradition in his memory. If true, Elvis could have celebrated this tradition only twice before his untimely death in August of 1977, less than 3 years after the film's release. Coincidentally, Lynn Griffin, who plays Claire in Black Christmas, later portrayed Elvis's grandmother in Priscilla in 2023. Wow. Full circle!
Wow, look at that.
Full circle.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, this is probably one of the best movies we've watched. I love watching it. This is like the 4th or 5th time I've watched this movie. It's always good. I would say this is a 9.5 out of 10 for me.
Oh yeah, it definitely ranks up.
Oh there, yeah, it definitely, sure. If not a 10.
I could see easily being a 9.
Oh, yeah.
Me. Yeah. But I really just enjoyed the seasonal horror of the film, the phone ringing over the end credits, like continuing on that, that creepiness of the phone, but and the fact that I can tell you right now, like, this movie inspired so many other horror films after this. So I think it was definitely worth the watch for sure.
Yeah. It's a great movie. It's a great story. It's creepy. It's one of the very first of its kind. And like you said, it again, this movie walked so many could run.
Mm-hmm. Well, as always.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
What are we watching next week, Troy? Because today, this is actually episode 29.
It is.
So next week is episode 30, which means it's your choice.
Yeah.
You want to tell them what we're watching?
So next weekend's episode will be none other than Gremlins.
Yep.
So
we're watching Gremlins. Apparently,
stay tuned.
Either Troy has never seen this movie or it's just been a really long time because he doesn't remember.
I feel like it's been long enough to declare never legally having seen it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I watched Gremlins not too long ago, actually. Really? I think like maybe last year I watched it.
Well, you are about to see it again.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen Gremlins. It's been too many. Too many.
For our listeners, if you've never seen Gremlins, then I highly recommend watching it before listening to next week's episode.
Or not. You know.
Not. Yeah, let us spoil
Get it
spoiled.
For you. Yeah.
Whatever. Who cares anyways? So, but as always, thank you for tuning in to And I Made Him Watch. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to check out our other episodes where we dive into more eerie and thrilling films. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Stay connected with us on social media. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We're on Blue Sky now.
Oh, so apparently TikTok is actually coming to an end.
Allegedly. We'll see.
It's pretty serious this time.
Yeah, I think they're going to wind up taking it to the Supreme Court. So
hopefully.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know if it's going to get any better, though, if it's taken to the Supreme Court.
Well, for more information and to explore our full episode library, visit our website at www.andimadehimwatch.com. Your support means the world to us, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Share your favorite moments, suggest movies for us to cover, or just say hi. So, as always, stay spooky.
Bye!